Hi, this is the second video in the series on my attempts to save America. I'm trying to get everybody on track here. On the earlier video, I did make one mistake. I said country instead of, I meant to say world, but I read it over and it looks okay, so I'm going to go ahead and publish that one. It's good enough. It's not great, but it's definitely passable. I wrote down a few notes on some things that I want to cover to correct, like for example, I'll probably put it in the caption below where I meant to say world, not country. Hopefully you caught that or understood what I meant. Most of this stuff I'm flying off the top of my head, but I do have a few little cards here because I want to make sure I don't miss any very important points. But for the most part, this is just I'm just kind of winging it here as I go along. Earlier in the first video, I did start to talk about malum in se and malum prohibita, and where I'm going with that, I want to tell you a little bit more about where I'm going with that. Is there's a constitutional right that you have, that everybody has, that you don't hear very much of, and it's the right to be informed in the nature and the cause of the accusation, and that is it's part of the Sixth Amendment. And there's a reason why you don't hear about that at all. It's a right that very few people even raise, and it's the main issue that we were raising back in the 90s. This group that I was involved in, we were raising. Actually, if you don't raise an issue, you waive it. So we raised every issue, but that was the key thing that really pissed them off and got things done. They would usually find some other reason to dismiss the case other than on those grounds. In fact, they would find some other reason. They would never want to dismiss the case on lack of jurisdiction. But that's basically what you're raising with those issues, is you're raising a pretty extreme issue. And I'm going to get into why that's such a powerful issue later on here. But what I'm talking about when I'm talking about malum in se and malum prohibita is I'm talking about your Sixth Amendment right to be informed in the nature and the cause of the accusation. The nature of the accusation is whether it's malum in se or malum prohibita, and the cause of the accusation is who you injured and how you injured them. And these issues, subject matter jurisdiction is the issue that you're raising there. Do they have jurisdiction over the subject matter? Is there an actual injured victim? And if they can't present a valid victim, then you can, the judge wait. Well, if the court doesn't have jurisdiction over the case, they waive their judicial immunity and actually open themselves up to suit. And we were filing lawsuits against judges for not establishing jurisdiction in the case. I'm going to tell you about that, and I'm going to tell you about those back in the 90s. Things were probably a little different then. Nowadays, the government's a lot better organized. They use COINTELPRO, and they'll stonewall you, and they just won't pay any attention to you. So if you want to raise these issues in court, you're welcome to. But I think it's important that you understand what needs. I'm more raising these, telling you about this stuff because it's more of a political movement now. There's enough people that are pissed off to where we can actually go ahead and just vote this legislation in. If we can keep, get control of the vote count, we'll have to get control of the vote count before we could. My computer's prompting me for something. Anyway, I'm getting way ahead of myself here, but I do have some ideas, some pretty good ideas and stuff that I'm going to share with you guys all. But that malum in se, malum prohibita, I'm going to be talking a lot more about later, and I'll explain how we raise that issue in court. I'm not trying to give you coaching on how to handle a court case, even though I will go over some basics if you do happen to get arrested. Just some information that's helped me. But this is more to give you an idea on how we've been screwed and what we can do to unscrew ourselves legally and without having to get shot. A lot of people, I hear a lot of people online complaining about the cops. I don't blame you, but try and keep in mind that the cops are just nothing more than thugs for the attorneys. The attorneys are the cops' masters. Okay, the attorneys are. I mean, you're mad at the cop for busting. A lot of people are mad at the cops for arresting you for pot. But remember, cops are they're just the thugs for the attorneys. It's the attorneys that wrote the law that's fucking you around. It's the attorneys that are writing all these laws. And so, and I'm not saying all attorneys, I'm not saying that all these attorneys out here are bad people, but the attorneys that get involved in the legislative process, the attorneys that get involved in the legislative process, they get in there and they want to write as many laws as they can. And of course, a lot of the almost all the attorneys never want to raise any kind of constitutional law because it'd be screwing around their own little scam. And the thing is all the attorneys have done is they've really just come up with their own little language. They have legalese. You probably have even heard this term. Attorneys have legalese. They have their own language. When you go into court, they have their secret handshakes, and they have Latin, and they have the little court proceedings and stuff, and it's all made up. And they've all just made up this stuff. And when you go in there, of course, you're intimidated, and you don't know what's going on, so you have to kind of hire one of them to protect yourself against all the other ones and stuff. And that would be fine if you're guilty of, like, murder or kidnapping and stuff like that. But see, a lot of people are taken into jail, and they're in jail on bullshit, on things that they should not be taken to jail on. And that's the difference. All businesses to one degree or another, all professions, I should say, to one degree or another, have their own language. Like plumbers, they have their plumber lingo. And the reason why they have their plumber lingo is so you have to hire them to do the job. They're masters at they're experts at their trade. That's what they're good at. Carpenters, they all have their little lingo and their tools and stuff. All professions are like that. I'm in sales. I even have my own lingo, and I have my own. And I'm a closer. I know all the different. I've read books on closing. It's what I've spent my life doing. So all these different trades. We all have our little language and our own way of doing things and stuff, and we're experts at what we do. But the thing with attorneys having their own lingo is that attorneys ruin people's entire lives with their lingo. They put people in jail for the rest of their life. They have people executed and murdered, and so them having their own sacred language is dangerous. And so you have to know a little bit of legalese, and I happen to know quite a bit of legalese from having to deal with them. And I'm going to share with you. I'm going to teach you just about everything I know in these videos on legalese. And I'm not giving this information to you for any other reason, just kind of educate you on what exactly is going on. And so attorneys, it's fine, and I don't, if you'd have to be a complete asshole to want to be a cop nowadays with all these unconstitutional laws that they have. I'm sorry, but if you're a cop, you're an asshole. You're enforcing laws that are you're arresting people for bogus laws, and a lot of cops have even realized this and quit their job. But aside from the cops being the thugs for the attorneys, the really big asshole here is the attorneys that's writing all the laws. These attorneys are the ones that are writing all the laws. And I want to talk about, it's also generally accepted that it was the attorneys that caused the fall of Rome. They think of themselves as nobles. The attorneys, they think of themselves as nobles. They're writing laws that give them more power, that make them special. Like if you you kill a cop or you kill a member of Congress, that's a more serious crime than killing anybody else. That's making them special. They're passing the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, which gives basically them to hold you indefinitely without trial. The military, that's still all part of the executive branch. That's the president. That gives this small group of people the right to say, okay, we need to hold you without any due process at all, which is so unconstitutional. And then lately we have this new bill. Most recently, I have to look it up to find out what it is. House Representative H.R. 347, I believe it is. It's a Federal Restricted Buildings Ground Improvement Act of 2011. Now, that basically makes it illegal to protest. If I'm understanding it correctly, and I have read it, it's pretty short. It's not a huge, long bill, but if I'm understanding it correctly, it can be used to argue in court anyway. whether or not you're not allowed to protest. For basically, your First Amendment right of free speech is denied if if there's somebody there that's protected by the Secret Service, meaning the president and a whole bunch of other people. They're nobles, they're special people. Your free speech is suspended because this person is around. Now, who's the victim there? I mean, this person's victimized because we're exercising our free speech while this person is around. See, that's another one of these victimless laws there that they're passing that make them, the noble. And that's exactly what's happening. Is they really do have it in their mind. Not all attorneys, but a lot of the attorneys that get involved in the legal process, without question, they all think that they're smarter than you and me, and they're not. So this new bill, and it's just going to continue to get worse. Once your free speech is suspended in one area, it's just the next step. It'll be all government buildings, and pretty soon, they'll be able to arrest you, for anything. And, that crime carries 10 years, for just simply exercising your free speech. And this is whether whether the person's around or not. So if you're protesting and a congressman just happens to fucking drive by, it's 10 years prison time, 10 years federal prison time. And so this is the kind of crap that they're trying to say. And if I was arrested for it, I would argue my issues, but anymore they're so corrupt, it's only 50-50 I would win, even though it is unconstitutional law. But you can guarantee that I'd take it to trial and appeal. All right. So, in fact, I wanted to mention to you, this is something that this is a little nugget of information. There's a lot of these attorneys, if you go with the phone book, you'll see some attorneys will call themselves Esquire. And this is a little side note. Esquire is the title of nobility, and it's against the Constitution. If you read the federal Constitution, the government is not to give out titles of nobility. Now, admittedly, these attorneys, they weren't given, well, they kind of were given, but they're just kind of calling themselves an Esquire. But really, they're calling themselves a noble, really, when Esquire is a title of nobility. Now, the government didn't give them that title. They gave them the license to be an attorney, and they decided to call themselves an Esquire. And Esquire is a title of nobility. If I was going through the phone book looking for an attorney and I saw this guy call himself an Esquire, I would have to say that attorney is probably a pretty poor attorney, because he doesn't at least know the constitutional law against that being a title of nobility. And he's not really breaking the law, but he's basically calling himself a noble. And it's not the government giving him the title, so it's not really against the law, but he should know that the titles of nobility are against the law here in the country. If he doesn't know that, he's probably not a very good attorney. He probably doesn't know. He doesn't know any constitutional law, that's for damn sure. Or he's just a pompous prick. I would stay away from that attorney. It's about the same thing. An attorney calling himself Esquire is about the same thing as me calling myself King Steve Almond, walking around. I'm King Steve Almond. That's about the same damn thing. That you don't really want to hire that guy. So, what an asshole. He's probably not very knowledgeable. About the Occupy movement, I want to touch lightly on the Occupy movement early on, because there's a lot of occupiers, and I do have a lot of respect for the Occupy movement. I want to say that right off the get-go. They got a lot of balls to stand up to the cops and to get organized and stuff like that. I respect that. I've done that for years and years. I was doing it back in '94. I was going out getting arrested on purpose for unconstitutional laws, refusing to show cops my ID and arguing the validity of obstruction of government process way back in the '90s. So I've been there, and I've served a lot of time in jail, and my police record shows it. And on the arrests and why and everything, and even some of the court decisions that I've had. So, the Occupy movement, I do have a lot of respect for you. Last thing I want to do is upset the Occupy movement, but I kind of want to get you guys a little bit more on track here, because occupying business, these are major corporations that you're occupying here, and you're off track. The businesses, yes, they do, use political money to influence, to control our government. But really, our problem is kind of our own making. We've given the government the power to pass the laws to benefit their corporate buddies. Okay? The corporations use the government, but the government shouldn't have that power to begin with. The FDA that basically works for Big Pharma, okay, we've allowed the FDA to be in existence. The FDA basically it gives us the illusion of protection from drugs, but that's all it is. They're not really protecting us. They're working with the corporation. We need to get rid of the FDA, and when a company kills a whole bunch of people, they need to be prosecuted criminally. They need to have a huge class action lawsuit. There needs to be more serious repercussions rather than a fine. Basically, when a fine, you're talking about a payoff, dude. That's all it is. It's a straight payoff. They need to be prosecuted criminally for killing people, so they'll stop fucking doing it. Okay. There needs to be more serious repercussions, and by having these little agencies in here, they're just taking our money, plus they're taking the corporation's money, and they're getting rich. And it's our fault for letting these agencies stay in existence. We've let our government have this power, and we have the power. We shouldn't attack big businesses just for being businesses. We don't really have the power to say, you bad banker for doing all this stuff. Okay, well, the law that gave the bankers the power is the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. It's our fault for not having that law declared unconstitutional, for not electing people that will do what it takes to get rid of the Federal Reserve. That's our responsibility. To complain of business, is well and good. It's our law for not passing a law that that gets big business, that forces political action out of government. There's a lot of different angles and different things that we can take on how to get government and business, how to separate them. And I'm going to talk about a few different things, as we go along. But that's our fault. In other words, we can't really do anything, or we shouldn't do anything about big business. Okay, business is business. The people that work, if you work hard and you want to make money, that's fine. But we can do something. If we want to tackle big business, we've got unions. If we follow through with the rest of the things that I want to do, I want to basically get rid of mala prohibita laws, especially as far as the individual is concerned. Well, that's going to free up a lot of these attorneys' time. They're not going to have anything better. They're only going to be going after murderers, vandals, rapists, thieves, those kind of things, real crimes. They're not going to have anything better to do but to go after big business. It's time for them to stop hassling a little guy, and it's time for the lawyers and the cops. If we shrink their crimes, their laws, and they're not going to have anything better to do but to go after the corporate criminals. And that's what we need them to be doing. So there's a lot of things I want to go into with that too. But I know I keep saying that I'm going to go into this stuff, but I really am. I have a huge outline here, touching lightly for now, and then I'm going to go into it all. But what we've got to do, our problem is our government's too big. We've given our government too much power, and the corporations use the power of the government to pass laws to help themselves. We've let our government get too big. 1 out of 20 people work for the government. 10% of the people are unemployed. So that means there's 2 people that aren't working out of 20. There's one that's mooching off everybody else as a government employee. So that was 17 people to pay the salaries of these 3 people, and it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse, and it's going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. And it's a lot of these government jobs they need to go get jobs in the private sector. And we don't need this big of a government. If you let government get big, just like Rome, they're going to pass all kinds of laws that are going to do nothing. These laws, this new bill, this Federal Grounds Protection Act, that is not a law to protect you and me. That is just a blatant law to protect them. to protect them from your free speech. They can arrest you for free speech, for speaking your mind around them. Now, if that isn't making them a noble, I don't know what is. So it's our government, you see. So if you want to occupy something, we have to occupy the government. Well, the government, unfortunately, has all the guns, and they've also got all the law on their side, even though it isn't constitutional, but they have the laws. They've made it okay for them to go and pepper spray you for just sitting there. They can pepper spray you, and you sure you can sue, but all you're really taking is the taxpayers' money, and of course the cops still working. So they've got all the guns, they've got all the power. So, when people talk about us being the 99%, really what it actually is you have 5% of the people work for government, plus all their friends and family and everybody else that benefits from them working from the government. So you really have about 5% there. So that leaves us with being 95%. Then you have about 60% of the people that just really are scared and don't want to get involved. And, I don't blame you. And so that leaves about 40%. And out of that, probably about 17% maybe, have a more clearer idea of what's going on. But a lot of you just really, just don't have any direction. And the direction we need to be taking here is we need to downsize the government. That's what we need to do. The government, that's their first goal. And you can kind of do this stuff in order. We can rein in big business later on. First thing we got to do is we got to take our government back, because the government's too big, and with all this power that we have allowed the government to have, we've allowed the government to have all this power. The corporations are just simply using that power to shove out to make it almost impossible for small business, to do all kinds of terrible things and stuff. So again, I do respect the Occupy movement, but complaining about businesses doing what businesses do isn't really getting us anywhere. What we need to do is we need to focus more on shrinking the government, which in turn does shrink the big business's power. A lot of people think this the opposite way, that we're going to make government protect us from big business. Well, all we're doing is we're making government really big, but they still work with big business. Do you understand? So paying government to protect us from big business, to catch white collar criminals, just ain't happening. That's not happening. They're working together, you see. And so we can't really lawfully do anything about small business, and we shouldn't. We shouldn't do anything about big business. What we should do is shrink our government, get them the hell out of our lives, and then we won't have so many damn laws, and then smaller businesses will be able to actually compete, because they don't have a zillion rules and regulations that they're supposed to follow, which, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Look into opening up, or what it would take to open up a restaurant right now, all the health codes and everything else that you would have to follow. It's ridiculous. And so that's what I'm talking about. Not just on the federal level, but also on city, state, and county levels too. It's pretty ridiculous. So anyway, this video is already pretty long. I'm already up to 23 minutes, so I'm going to stop here. I didn't get anything where I wanted to go. The next one I'm going to talk about a little bit about who's behind it all. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and stop it here and post this one up. And I'll put up video number 3. Oh, and this website actually had all this information. I'm wearing this shirt. The website was taken down. I'll probably get another one up here. Hopefully there'll be some interest in what I'm saying here. Thank you.